Hi, this is Eric of Eyeon Software and welcome to another Fusion tutorial. In this tutorial you will learn a very simple technique to apply UV unwrapping of planar objects. Especially this is useful for paint jobs, for example when it comes to track removal on a dolly shot. Well, unfortunately I didn't have a dolly around. The next film studio is quite a few miles away. So I went out in the backyard and took this award-winning shot here, which as you can see is not only a handheld camera but also has a pseudo dolly track in here. So you see we have all these issues with motion blur, etc here in the frame. What I did is I 3D tracked this scene in PFMatchit from the Pixel farm. Looks like this. It is a node-based 3D tracking application, quite easy to operate, excellent results. So basically did a feature track, a camera solve orient scene, and finally exported it as Maya ASCII 4.5, which I then brought back in to Fusion as a camera and a point cloud. Looks like this. So obviously when I view through my camera, I've got my scene, I've got my point cloud here, etc, etc. So how would I now get the track here painted out of the frame? Well, it could be done frame by frame, which is quite a tedious task, and I'm always a friend of simple solutions. So what we do here is we add a second camera to our scene. Let's view this in perspective mode. First off, I want to have this look straight down. So that's minus 90 degrees and 180 degrees in Y. So it looks in the same direction as my imported camera. One thing worth noticing though is that when I exported my scene from PFMatchit, I made sure that my points that lie on the actual ground plane, so on the actual wood deck here, are now lying on the ground plane of my imported scene. So that's basically done with the orient scene node in PFMatchit. So I now want to project this image onto an image plane of this camera here. To do that, I add a background tool, which is the same resolution as my imported footage here, and just connect that to the camera, and it shows up as an image plane in the camera itself. So I could now manually adjust it so that it sits on the ground plane, but actually since I want to modify my camera, I'm going with an expression here like so, and then connect that to the camera's Y offset. So that means wherever I move my camera in terms of Y offset, the camera's image plane always ticks on the ground plane. This is actually what I want. So if I now turn on lighting, you would expect that the imported camera, where I already enabled the camera projection, and that's another thing you have to check for. When you import your camera, the film back will be imported according to your 3D track. So in this case it's set to outside, but in the projection tab you would have to set it manually to match the gate fit in the controls tab. Right, so I enabled camera projection. You would expect to see some light on this camera's image plane here, but for now it's just an image plane and it's controlled by the camera. So let's just add a replace material node after the camera, and there you go. Now you actually have projection here. We can switch off the image plane of our imported camera, and actually let me switch off the grid as well. I don't need that, and I don't want to see the point cloud for now. So what I do is I go to the last frame of my footage here, and then I start adjusting my camera. And I want to adjust it in a way so that I only see the actual object or the area of objects I want to remove from my frame. Well, it wouldn't make sense to, give this a big distance and, get all that in, because I don't want to paint that out. And to get maximum resolution in my output render, I'm just going for this area here. Right, so that looks good, and I add a 3D render to my scene. And just for the sake of this demo, let's rename this camera to base cam. And in the renderer, I say I want to render my base camera, and I want to enable lighting, and this can actually be done with the OpenGL renderer. So what you see now is actually sort of UV unwrapping of the base cam, which gets the projected material in here. And if I step to the animation, you see this is actually a stabilized and unwrapped version of my imported footage. Well, now for the paint job. This tutorial is not about roto painting, so I'm gonna go the really fast route here, just by adding a paint node. And I'm doing this, as you can see, on the last frame of my footage. So I just take a polygon stroke here, line it up with my my track, of course. Go to my polyline strokes, adjust the brush size a bit, maybe like so, and then finally switch it to wire removal mode. Adjust the distance, maybe something like that. A bit more size couldn't hurt. Right, so that's a quick and dirty job here. You can tell it from, you know, get some duplicates here from objects, etc. But you know how to do rotoscoping. This tutorial is not about that. So let's assume this goes to the roto department, and the one thing that is worth noting here is I'm just painting on the last frame, but since the incoming footage to this paint tool is actually a number of frames, I get all the motion blur, etc., painted completely right with just a single paint stroke. Right, now we have to bring that back to our camera, and again we use a replace material here, like so. Pipe our painted version in. We have a clean plate now here. Let's move this down, because I also want to introduce now my original camera, my imported camera, to the newly created scene here, like so. And of course I have to render that out again as well, and in this case I want to render my imported camera. So that looks like this now. And one thing that's still missing is a little bit of an alpha mask, where you could paint that in as well using the obvious techniques, but again I'm going for the lazy solution here. Add brightness contrast. To the brightness contrast we add a rectangular mask. I'm actually viewing my original footage here. I just, you know, adjust it like that. Maybe give it a bit of a soft edge and invert it, and then use my brightness contrast to bring the gain down in the alpha, which gives me a rendered image like that. And the last step obviously is to combine that image with my original footage, and obviously you have to switch the inputs here, and the merge should be subtractive. Right, so there you go. Nice paint job, track removal with UV unwrapping of a planar surface. Well, most tracks actually do live on a planar surface, which is good, so this method might save you some time. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Stay tuned till next time.